welcome to another episode of the podcast with your host, me, Simon Mitchell, online body transformation coach and founder of IamParadiseFitness.com. We've got another great episode in store for you today, so let's get straight on with it. Hey there, and welcome to this episode of the podcast. And I'm joined by a fellow MNU graduate, Miss Louise Bang, the best surname in all of fitness, I have to say. Hello, Louise. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. And yes, that is my surname leads up to a lot of innuendos. And I wish I would say a lot of opportunities, but no. But it's a great surname, and it's never going to get changed.
Yeah. Never change it. Best surname of all time.
Never.
Fact. Cool. So Louise is on the show to talk about a bunch of different things. I think we'll go off on various different tangents as we start to delve into a few different topics. But mainly we want to talk about the creating lasting behavior change and successful weight loss, because that's one of the challenges that many people struggle with, not just simply calorie deficit, but it's how do I actually make this progress stick? And then how do I actually turn it into a lifelong change rather than just a 90-day fad? So before we get launched into all of that, Louise, do you want to give people a quick bit of background about who you are, what you do, and all of that different sort of cool stuff?
Cool. Yeah. So obviously, name is Louise Bang. I am originally from Denmark, full-blooded Viking. I've been living in the UK for about 9 years now. MNU Certified Nutritionist. So I started my own fitness journey about 4 or 5 years ago. Went through a challenge, got fed loads of bullshit, which then led me to get really interested in facts rather than fiction. Found Martin McDonald because he called out the previous trainer that I had. So obviously we were already on the same wavelength there. And then from there, I started listening to nutrition podcasts, things like that. And I realized that actually this makes sense to me, and maybe I should look into it further. And that's how I got into nutrition. So yeah, just qualified, taking on clients now, doing all the hashtag business, hashtag entrepreneur stuff. But yeah, that's it. Other than that, I just like to pick up some heavy stuff once in a while, put it back down, repeat.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I think we're all the same. I think I'm the same. It's like lift mass in different directions. That's kind of
pick it up, put it down.
Exactly. And I think like in terms of like my introduction to MNU, I guess it was fairly similar, because Martin, I don't know if he'll hate me for saying it, but I didn't have a clue who he was before I joined, and I didn't have a clue what MNU was. It was just kind of like I was on holiday with some friends who happened to be on the prior intake to the one that we were on, and I was in their apartment in Dubai, just doing my own work, doing my kind of fitnessy thing. And then I overheard this guy in the background talking about myths. He was talking about gluten and artificial sweeteners. And he just kind of caught my attention. I was like, who's that guy? That sounds interesting. And then I was just like, yeah, I'll do that course. I'll do that. And like, it's just from that the whole kind of transformed the way I approach nutrition, the way I think about nutrition, and it's like been one of those little happy accidents that you don't really plan for, it just kind of materializes, which is
and that's the thing about Martin is as well, people sometimes call him out for calling people out, but actually that grabs attention, and that's what grabbed my attention as well. I was very well aware that I'd been fed bullshit, and the fact that he called that out so brazenly as he did, with absolutely no shame, very happy to call someone a gimp. And I just and I'm a very say it as it is kind of person myself, so when I heard him speak, I thought that's it. I thought kind of falls in line with who I am as a human as well, the no bullshit kind of approach to things, and just calling these gimps out and making sure that actually we leave a little bit of a legacy where we're helping people and not just taking people's money, because that is 50% of the industry.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's so many people out there that will just look for the cash rather than helping people.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
all those sorts of things. So I think, I guess MNU for the both of us have been really instrumental, I guess, in changing or maybe like reinforcing our own thought processes that the way we want to approach things is the right way to do it, and there's kind of a backup there. So
it's definitely shaped us as
about Martin.
Let's stop talking about Martin. His ego is big enough anyways. Let's not bump it up.
Let's move on from him. So talking of which, like, one of the key components of MNU obviously is about learning the fundamentals of nutrition itself, from calorie deficits to macronutrients, all of that sort of stuff. But one of the things that maybe people don't really understand, or from the outside world maybe don't really appreciate, is the level of detail that we like to go into in terms of helping people with habit changes, with behavior change, and things like that. So as sort of like an initial kickoff question, maybe like from your point of view, how do you feel like behavior change influences and supports successful weight loss in general?
I think you kind of hit the head on the nail a little bit before when you talked, instead of having a 90-day fat diet or whatever. I think it's very important for us to, as practitioners, and I know you do this and I do this, is that we think beyond that 90 days. We have to think about when people go back to maintenance. There's very important new habits that needs to be built so that they don't finish their plan with you and then go on maintenance and then go back to their old style, and then they regain all the weight again. It's one of those that, all these habits that we have that leads us to being overweight, they've been built over, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And it starts very young. Things like finish what's on your plate. It's things like you have to eat your vegetables before you can have dessert, making vegetable a bad thing. Comfort is food. All of these things, we've built them up. So it's almost naive to think that without actual effort and without constant trying, failing, we're going to build up some habits that actually support this person that we want to be. And that's the point exactly. You want to be a better version of yourself. Well, that better version of yourself do things differently. But it's going to take time for you to get used to doing things differently.
Yeah, and I think like I don't know if like your experience is the same, but I've moved away from doing sort of like 90-day transformations and things like that, because I guess that the typical person that I attract as a client, probably like more often than not, 90 days isn't long enough for them to achieve the goal that they want in the first place, and B, to create the sustainable habit change that they need at the same time. So I generally go on a case-by-case basis. So client comes to me and says, I want to achieve X, Y, Z. And then I say, right, okay, based on where you're at, kind of nutrition knowledge and how your kind of current lifestyle is, I think it's going to be more like this sort of time frame, 6, 9, 12 months, whatever it may be. But I've found as well is that trying to coach someone to increase calories after successfully dieting is quite a challenge, because there's almost like a fear response to say, well, I've been trying for long time to lose some weight. Now I've finally done it, and you're now asking me to eat more. And that's like, oh, I'm scared. So for me, that was, when that started to happen, that's then been a learning curve for me as a coach to say, right, I need to teach some of this way earlier in the process, to then say, okay, when we get to, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months in, when this person needs a little bit of a break from dieting, we're not at that point of fear of calories. I don't know if you've had like a similar experience, but that's certainly what I found with people, is that, oh shit, I'm scared now of food. Not in a different kind of way, but they're just scared of regressing. And I think there's been important to try and counteract that as early as possible with good habits.
Yeah, I think the maintenance diet is potentially one of the most undersold, underappreciated diets there is. I think that it's important from the offset to kind of sell it a little bit, with your clients, make sure that they understand that, being successful at maintaining your weight is a massive achievement, and being able to sustain that, for the better part of your life is nothing to sniff at. So that in itself becomes a goal at some point. I've had clients as well where we have successfully lost the weight and we've gone, right, we're going to do a month on maintenance now, and I think if you've already planted that seed in the beginning of the plan, that it's so important, and to kind of tap in to some of their experiences previously where they've regained the weight, which we know so often happens by the time they come to us, then they won't necessarily be so objective towards that. A lot of my clients has come to me after having done challenges and regained the weight, and there wasn't anything per se wrong with the challenges. It was just the fact that there wasn't enough personalization for that to be applicable to them, and for them to know what to do by the time they reach their targets.
Yeah, I think like what you said there is like really important, in the sense that almost that pre-framing up front is super important. And I guess it's like, convincing someone that this isn't a, do 90 days and then we stop. There's, there might be, if that's the specific goal that someone has and it's achievable within 90 days, but more often than not, it's something that is more long lasting, and therefore there's different skills that you need to learn. But then I think pre-framing that up front to say that this is what we're doing and this is how we're going to do it is really important. And I think that definitely, I guess in the last year or so for me, has been helpful, because it sets that tone of behavior change from the start. You're setting the tone of, we are changing your habits and changing your behavior for the long term. We're not just trying to lose 10 kilos.
Yeah. And I think as practitioners, it's very, very important that we take that time to get up close and personal with our clients, make sure that we're not just selling them a dream. We're not just selling them 10 kilos in 90 days. We have to get to know them, know their family, know their lifestyle, understand why it is that they want to achieve what they want to achieve. And then make sure that the habits that we're building along the way correlates with that. Because if they don't, once they're done, of course, they're not going to sustain those habits because it doesn't correlate with who they are. So it was nonsense from the onset. I think sometimes that's the trouble with group coaching sometimes, is that it's too generic. But you can very successfully do group coaching if you go into depth with each client and make sure that they are not all just on the same plan, and that the process-oriented goals that you throw in there kind of correlates with what they're trying to achieve and why. And that's the key to making sure that when they then hit maintenance, or when they're done with you, they know what they need to do to carry on themselves. And isn't that essentially what we're trying to achieve, to get someone to a stage where they don't ever need nutrition advice again? They can do this on their own. That should always be the goal.
Yeah, I think I 100% agree. And that's why, so for me, one of the things that, if someone jumps on a phone call with me and asks me about, say, coaching or whatever, I'll always tell them that my goal is to make you feel confident enough that you could fire me in 3 months' time. Not necessarily everyone, not everyone does.
Please don't.
I hope you stay with me for lots of things, other than the fact that I'm saying I don't want you to feel like I'm your crutch for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
It's just not why I'm here. So education, I guess, is one of the
100%.
The thing.
100%.
The thing you said about like the group coaching and being very, very individual, I think for me that's like really important as well. Getting to know people at an individual level is quite crucial, because I think that as soon as you start to do that, then you really kind of peel back the layers of, okay, what is this person's real motivation? And also not just their motivation, but also what is the potential pitfalls that you might be able to see. What's their behavior like? What's their lifestyle like? And then before that stuff potentially starts to trip them up. So for example, I don't know, if they've got a super busy, super stressful career, you can find that out pretty much on day one.
Yeah.
Start to mitigate for that in the latter stages. And then when it also comes to like group coaching, I don't do group coaching myself. I do like more one-to-one based stuff. But I've still felt like, is it about like, if I had this like real fancy process where each client comes in and we'll do this kind of reset thing, and then we'll do this and we'll do that. And then it's like, you try that maybe, and then it's kind of like always comes back to, for me, is just sit with the person in front of you and what do they need, rather than this fancy, process that I've designed. So I think again, like on a group coaching basis, if you can get to that individual, then I think you make massive amounts of progress.
Yeah, and that's the main thing. You can have as many processes as you want in place, and you can have as many templates and all of these things, but it all boils down to that person in front of you. And if you're not able to create, for the lack of a better word, an actual fucking friendship with the person, and get that trust from that person, you're never going to know what they really want. They're going to hide all sorts of shit from you. When things go wrong, they're not going to tell you because they don't feel comfortable enough that they can tell you all of these things. And I think sometimes in this industry, it becomes very glossy. You have this pretend coach that, talks to you for half an hour every week, but maybe they're not really listening. And, I think if you're in this industry, you need to be in this industry because you really fucking want to help people. You really want to get deep with someone and find out actually the goals that you've told me that you want to achieve. You don't want to fucking achieve them. You don't want them. That's what you think you should be saying. You don't want to, focus on sleeping 9 hours, per night. That's got nothing to do with what you're trying to achieve. Let's get to the root of it. Let's find out, actually, you want to look good for that Mexican holiday, don't you? Okay. Just say it like it is. You don't have to, all of these things. So I think that's, for us, it's just so important to develop that trust where the client understands that it's okay to be honest. It's okay to have falls. It's okay to not be perfect. And, it's okay to have step backs as long as we're honest about it and we say what's going on. And that makes it so much easier for us as well. We've all had clients where we're pulling our hair out because we can't figure out why is there no results. And this person is definitely being honest, definitely being honest. They're fucking not, Simon. They're lying. Absolutely.
Everybody lies. It's just, I know.
But then we have to look at ourselves as well and take part of that blame and ask ourselves, why are they lying? Have I not created an environment where they feel like they can be truly honestly themselves? And if I haven't, then that's on me. And sometimes that's the conversation you need to have with that client and literally say, we need to work on our relationship, and get to know really who they are. And I think that's a responsibility that sits on our shoulders.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think, it's very easy to say, okay, well, that client just wasn't compliant. They didn't do what I said. That would be very easy to slip into that. But then you've got to say, well, okay, why? Did I miss something in the setup of the program? Did I miss something in their lifestyle? Did I not ask enough questions about X, Y, or Z? Or did I not create the right connection with that person? Or do they not feel like they can tell me stuff? I think when you have that reflection on yourself first, it helps that relationship with that client initially, but then it also helps all of your future ones as well.
100%.
And I think like one of the things that I've started to do more recently with new clients is I've set up videos that I've pre-recorded, but they're only like 90 seconds to 2 minutes long. And when they start, there's one for every day of the first 14 days. Because over the course of the last couple of years where I've been coaching clients, is that you can kind of guess that there are going to be similar questions that come up in their mind as they start. Okay, well, I made a bit of quick weight loss in the first couple of days, but now it's spiked back up. Okay, here's a video about water weight fluctuations and why that's happening. But one of the key ones, as I say, on day one, is the video is just called "You Cannot Fuck This Up." So it's literally me saying is the only way we can go off track is if we stop communicating.
Yeah, and that's true.
Whatever issue you have, you can't disappoint me. I won't think any less of you if you don't, hit calories or you miss a workout. The only way that we can go off track and you won't achieve your goals if we stop communicating and we don't talk about what issues you're having. So, I think that, that's just one of, I don't know if people like me swearing at them on day one, but it's just one of the ways.
That's get used to it. I'm sorry, but
yeah, it's just one of the ways just for me to try and break down those barriers, break down those walls, and start to have that like real easy flowing communication from day one. But I think you're absolutely right. Are you creating that environment for the trust relationship to happen? I think is a key one.
Absolutely.
Cool. So in terms of like behavior change, what do you think like for you in your mind would be those like key components of how do you start to get the building blocks of behavior change in place?
So I think for me, one of the first things, like we discussed, is get to know my client and really identify the trouble areas. So, the client will identify with someone. That's what they're inspiring to be. That's what, they picture themselves to be. Okay, well, what sort of things does that person do on an everyday basis consistently? Okay, there are some goals in there. Then we look at, what is the actual motivation for change? If it's not important enough for the client, it's not going to happen. And that's what I meant before when I was talking about that goal isn't relevant for you because you don't actually really want it. So we need to find out what the motivation is for the change and what kind of process-oriented goals we can stick in that. And then make sure that actually the goals that we're choosing are easy enough to be achieved, but also they have to be hard enough for them to actually make a change. It can't be something that is so easily done that it doesn't actually mess with the client's life, because it has to mess with their lives a little bit. It has to stir the pot. It has to be interesting. It has to give them a sense of achievement when they actually hit that target every single day. So I think some of the key components in there is that sense of achievement, that the goal should have. It's about making sure that it's a goal that fits in with their why, which I know everyone's talking about their why, but it's a thing. It's a thing and it's important. And I think you need to put in some solid measurement of success as well. You need to make sure that actually it's being measured and that there is some sort of reward, whether it's positive self-chat, whether it's encouragement from your coach, whether it's from other people if you're in a group setting, if it's from other people, there needs to be a sense of achievement that spurs you on to do exactly the same thing the next day. And that needs to be carried through over and over and over again. And then you fall and you get it wrong. And then it's all about just getting up and then just doing it again. I think that's important, but also making sure that you're not overloading yourself with too many habit changes at once. I see a lot of coaches taking on a client and going, right, so we're going to hit, now so you don't exercise, right? So we're going to go to the gym 4 times a week. Perfect. Okay, so you're pretty sedentary. Okay, so we're going to get 10,000 steps in because for some reason, 10,000 is like a unicorn magical number that one spits out.
Magic happens at 10,000 steps.
Oh, that's where the magic happens. That's where all the fat loss happens. And then you're going to get 9 hours of sleep, because even though you have small children and your husband work night shift, that's what I want. So you're going to sleep 9 hours as well. And whilst we're at it, I want you to read a book every month, and I want you to only eat organic. And do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
Things, once you pile that on to a client at the same time, there is absolutely no way for them to succeed. And when you take away the opportunity to succeed or even surpass expectations, you're screwing your clients over straight up right there. So it's about finding that combination with not too little, but not too much.
And how do you, like you mentioned before about you need to kind of make it fit them, but also you need to kind of create a little bit of not
Ruffle.
that's probably the wrong word, but a little bit of like a change and a little bit of disruption into their path. How do you kind of go about trying to bridge that balance between not like completely doing what you
Screw
said,
them over. Yeah.
screwing them over, but also give them enough positive pressure almost? How do you kind of go about balancing that?
I think it's one of those where you have the conversation where you have a really, really deep, long conversation about their everyday life. You need to understand what is their morning routine, what is their afternoon routine, what does their night look like? Do they like to sit down and eat with the family for dinner? Do they like to go out with lunch with their friends? Do they normally go out in the weekend and are sociable? All of these things, and then you find something that's going to mess with their life a little bit, but none of the important stuff. So if one of the non-negotiables for them is to sit down with their family and have a nice evening meal, you're obviously not going to screw with that. Do you know what I mean? Because that would take away any enjoyment whatsoever. But you may have someone who, is hungry at breakfast, but also they're in a rush, and you go, right, you're now a person that doesn't eat breakfast. That's going to mess with them as a person, but not enough for them not to enjoy it. They might still get the benefits of really enjoying that, first meal that they have later on, and knowing that, all right, so we're halfway through the day and I'm already on track. I've already done what I needed to do. Now I just need to finish the day. So it's all about finding things that you can mess with that won't take away the enjoyment of the actual program and won't mess with their personal life. If you don't take into consideration a client's personal life and preferences, then essentially that goal or that habit that you're building is not going to last when they're done with you, because obviously they're going to go back to what they're enjoying doing. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's that balance you've got to strike. And like you were talking about the find your why thing, which I think it sometimes gets a little bit of a bad rap because it's a bit cliche these days. But I do think that it has its merits. It definitely has its benefits. Yeah. Certainly, like I do it from a personal point of view. Like, what's my reason for wanting to do X, Y, Z, and whatever. And it kind of does help. And the way I kind of approach it with my clients is that I send them a video which basically breaks down how to goal set for them. And we talk about like finding their why, because, a lot of people will say, especially, I guess, I'm not sure about your specific demographic, but certainly the clients I have, pretty much you can boil it down to lose weight, build a bit of muscle. where we're at. Or a variation of a theme. And then, so people will say, well, I want to lose X amount of kilos and build some muscle. Okay. And so why do you want to do that? Because I want to lose 10 kilos. But that's not really why you want to lose 10 kilos, because I could just tell you to chop your arm off and that probably ditch 10 kilos. But I'm guessing you don't want that.
They probably wouldn't do it. That's too much disruption, Simon. That's what we're talking about.
Balance.
Probably don't do that.
No. So then I kind of like break that down for them to talk about, what is like, it's something I used to do in like office world, was say, what's your like current state? How do you feel about yourself right now?
Yeah.
Then write me a statement of how you want that to change. What does new you, the new vision look like? Write that down in words. And then I get them to say, okay, well, what do you feel like the gaps? What is stopping you from getting from A to B?
Yeah.
What information do you need? What support do you need? And all those sorts of things that I kind of just tease out of them to say, for example, they will say, well, I feel like I've got no knowledge on this. That's like, right, okay, that's like gold dust for me as a coach to say, right, you feel like you don't know this, I can fill that gap for you. And if you feel
that's what she said.
Yeah. Damn, I can't believe I missed that.
God.
Fill in the gap, but also saying, like, from a coaching point of view, like, what support do you need from me? And then again, I can tailor my approach to that person. So I think that like the whole why thing is great, and I think when you then actually just take that, but then don't stop there, then use that as more information and more fuel to like get that person excited
Yeah.
about the whole thing. And then I think it's always good as well. I've done it. I don't do it with everybody, but a couple of people, I've reminded them of what they said. So like,
You have to
12
have that written down.
So like 12 weeks in, when they said, so I maybe say, I don't know what the exact phrase I'd use, maybe like, what does good look like? And they say, oh, it'd be great if I did this. So let's say, I don't know, let's say part of that was actually losing 10 kilos. And when they've lost 10 kilos and then they have a bit of an off day, oh, I don't feel like it's, going well. I feel like I fucked up. And they say, well, hang on, 12 weeks ago, you said, look, perfection, the vision would be 10 kilos. You've lost 10 and a half. So, what's happened? You should be proud of
that's the point exactly where we then have to realize that maybe in that instance, we haven't homed in enough on what the actual goal is, because losing weight is not going to make you feel better about yourself if something else is going on. And that's where there's the bridge between being a nutritional coach and actual therapy, because there is a link there, and I think we don't spend enough time looking after people's mental health as well. And for me, that's a key component for a lot of my clients, where we work on their mental health and we talk about things that are, bothering them, and stresses and, obviously anxiety and things like that, depression. Sometimes there is that missed opportunity to discuss the fact that losing 10 kilos might not necessarily make you happier. Lean people are just as unhappy as obese people. So what are you actually trying to achieve? If you see this picture of a lean person and think, when I lose 20 kilos, I am going to be that happy person. Well, no, not necessarily, because there's other things going on as well. Maybe you're not happy at work. Maybe you're not happy in your relationship. Maybe, you really want to learn this skill, but you don't have the balls to show up for it. Do we need to make that a goal? I had a client that didn't fancy going into the gym because he felt uncomfortable in his current state. But equally, there was other things he wanted to do as well. So swimming became a goal. Okay, we'll do swimming lessons, and that became a great way of actually getting some activity in, but learning a new skill. And then that correlated to feeling more confident. But that was important, because it wasn't the weight loss that was the goal. The goal was feeling confident in your body. And a lot of that has to do with actually learning new skills and, feeling like you're achieving something. So when that happens, I think that's where we need to think about, did we have a deep enough conversation in the beginning about what's actually going on behind the scene, and what that motivation is for the change, because there'll always be a new Monday. There'll always be, a reason to change beyond aesthetics. And I think that's what we need to find.
Yeah, and I think just from my own personal thing, I've had mental health issues that I've talked about on previous podcasts and things like that. So my listeners will be very well aware. But I was in that mindset of, I had to have a six-pack to be happy.
And, God bless you. No, you don't.
And I got there and I was fucking miserable.
So tired. So tired. So cold.
Yeah.
So sleep, but can't sleep.
But it was literally that thing of that was so I'd been bullied for being overweight and things like that. So I'd had a big attachment to happiness or unhappiness and being overweight. There's a huge attachment to that as a psychological thing for me. So in my mind, it was a case of, if I lose weight, I will be happy, because at the moment I am unhappy and overweight. So if I just switch that relationship around, magic, I'll be fine.
And then, that's how a lot of people see it.
Yeah. And then when I got to absolutely shredded beyond belief, now it's just actually, I don't feel any different. So then that was a huge light bulb moment for me. And again, as I coach people to be leaner, and again, I guess it's, something that wrestle with personally as well is that I, I want people to achieve their goals. I want people to get lean if that's their goal.
Yeah.
But it's almost like, don't do it because everybody else is doing it, or because
Exactly.
that's what you think you should do.
Yeah.
Do whatever it is. Whether you want to get absolutely shredded, fine, go do it.
Yeah.
But make sure you're doing it because you want to do it, and that makes sense for you, not because like I thought, my validation as a human came from other people's opinion of how much body fat I had. And
that's why we have to remember that sometimes, because we are so prevalent on social media, and a lot of the coaches out there are a little insta famous in their own rights. We have to remember the image that we put out there as well. A lot of clients will come to us and they will have seen pictures of us in incredible shape, and part of them feels like they need to impress us. Part of them feels like, well, I want to be like you, I want to be in a really good state like you. Well, my goal isn't yours. And it's very important that we then speak to the client on a level that they can see us as humans, and not these glossy pictures of ripped abs and fake tan and whitened teeth and all of this other fucking bullshit that doesn't even remotely define who we are as humans, and allow them as well to get to know us on a more deep level, so that they can see actually it's okay if you don't want abs, because abs, they look good for X amount of time, but they're not necessarily going to make you happy. What a ridiculous goal anyway when you think about it. I would like a thin skin. I go. Do you know what I mean? Like, we have to delve deep, beyond that, and make sure that our clients understand that we've had mental health issues. We've gone through that phase of thinking lean equals happy as well, where in actual fact there's so many more components to happiness, and whatever is going to take them there, well, that's what we should be working on. There's so many rules that's set up in the fitness industry of what is good and bad. You've got things thrown at people like cheat meals and eat clean, and that food is dirty and that has too much sugar. And we need to teach our clients to live on maintenance for life. So there has to be room for all of these things, and they need to understand that we make room for that as well. We're not these perfect human beings that don't eat sugar, but it's similar. We're not in good shape because we just hammer down donuts every day, although I wish that was the case.
Indeed.
But the point is just that we have to lead the way, and not just by glossy pictures.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I literally put out a post this morning where I said that I give out advice that I don't follow. Now it's a bit clickbaity of a headline.
That's very clickbaity, Simon. Well done, you.
At least I'm clickbaiting to give you a valid message. That's how I kind of rationalize it in my own mind. But I was basically saying, like, I don't track calories. I don't plan anything. But I used to, and I used to do it a hell of a lot. And I always bang on about it. So not necessarily tracking calories. I think that's very individual, but a lot of people can use it as a great tool, some not others, but whatever. So some form of managing calories, let's say. And then also planning. I think, like, for me, for planning for people, just like getting some sense of structure really helps a lot of different people. So people hear me talk about it all the time, but I don't actually do any of it, but I used to.
But you used to, and that's the point. That took you where you are now. It's exactly. So easy to say to someone, right, I'm going to coach you for intuitive dieting, which is a lovely little buzzword, and I'm going to coach you not to track and all of these things. But the reason why you and I are probably very good at non-tracking and not doing all of these things is because we used to. I can go into a supermarket and look at things, and I can roughly say how many calories and what macros is anything. It's like the fucking matrix, isn't it, inside our head? But the normal everyday person can't do that, and a lot of them probably could do with going through a little phase of tracking, not because it has to be a part of everyday life, but because it makes you more aware of what you're actually consuming. It makes you, it educates you on what things that you and I take for granted. What is a carbohydrate? What counts as fat? What is protein? I have people coming to me and say, well, what do you suggest for protein? And in my head, it's obviously very simple. Here are all these things, but it just isn't for someone who's not used to looking at their nutrition. They don't necessarily know, that, egg is both fat and protein. It's all of these things that, going through a phase of tracking kind of sets you up for being more aware of what you're doing, and actually being a bit more mindful of what goes inside your body. And then you can phase it out. I do have clients as well that don't track. By no means am I a macro coach. But I think a lot of people do benefit from going through that period of tracking.
Yeah, 100%. I think, like you say, it's a learned skill. And it's interesting. I had a DM from a guy.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I did. No dick pic.
Lucky you.
But I'm so at the point of recording this, I've done 230 podcasts so far. Now,
and am I 230 or 231?
You'll probably be like 233 or 4 by the time it's edited and put together. But so like 230, and he messaged me and said, "Hey, I love your podcast. Really getting some good information, but what's a calorie deficit?" So I was like, "Whoa!" I take this for granted. I speak so much about calorie deficit and managing calories and all that sort of, that you forget that there may be like people who come into your world years after you started, and to me, like, the calorie deficit is done to death. Surely everybody knows what I'm talking about by now.
Oh, surely though.
Yeah. Never start a sentence with surely.
Don't say surely.
Should I say again? Surely. I get caught into the trap of thinking that everybody knows the basics. And often it's a case of, not everybody does. And there's nothing wrong with not knowing the basics. It's
not at all
an expectation that you do know the basics.
And again, if you set that up, if people come to you thinking that they have to know the basics, then that's on you. You've created that unapproachable picture of where it's not okay that they don't know the basics. And I think for us, we have to remember as well that what we see on Instagram is not what every normal person sees on Instagram. Probably the majority of people that you follow are in the industry. So you think something is saturated because you've seen it every fucking day for like a year on end. Whereas one of the people that follow you might be the only one talking about this, because actually they use Instagram for its initial purpose. They like communicate with friends, and they see pictures of dogs, and they see what their aunt who lives in Spain is up to, whereas ours is just deficit. But we have to remember that other human beings don't see what we see on social media every day. And sometimes it is actually good to go back and just bring it back to the beginning. And I certainly think for any newbies that's listening, look, you don't have to actually know anything. If you get a coach on board and they're a good coach and they care about you and they want to teach you, they will teach you from start to finish. As long as you're just open and honest about what you know and what you don't know, then they should tailor that program accordingly, and they should make sure that you learn as much as you need to learn so that you don't need them anymore. That should be the end goal. And that's it.
100%. Cool. So let's like go off on a slight different tangent then. So
go on.
Let's imagine we've got a client who we've gone through the process of setting them up and all that sort of stuff, and they're off on their way, they're losing weight, blah, blah, blah. But then they hit an issue. They hit a challenge, they hit a bump in the road, they hit, brick wall, but they feel like they've fucked up.
Yeah.
Have you got like any like tips for someone listening who's maybe in that situation right now, who's felt like they've fucked up, gone off track? What are some of the ways to kind of use behavior change or those approaches to try and bring things back on board, but also maybe stop it trying to happen again in the future?
Yeah, I think, and I do realize I say I think a lot, but I know. When you fuck up, if you're extremely hard on yourself, if that knocks you sideways to the point where you have a week or two of plans, then you need to maybe take a step back and look at the end goal that you've set, and maybe think about whether you set that a little bit too rigidly. So that's the first thing. So if you've said, I need to lose 10 kilos by this exact date, unless you are a weight making athlete or you're a bodybuilding or bikini comp athlete, you don't need to be that rigid in your goal. Why does it have to be exactly 10 kilos? Once you start setting up more of a, what do you call, like more like phase goal. So between this and this, I would like to lose per week, or every month I'd like to lose between this and this. Once it's not so rigid, it gives a bit more room for life, and it kind of accepts that we are flawed humans. When you are building new habits, you're gonna fall. It is 100% sure you're gonna fucking fall, and you're gonna fall hard. But all that matters is that you get back on track as soon as possible. And every time you fall, you will notice that it takes less and less time for you to get back on it. And that's where the magic happens, because at a point, you'll get to a point where, there's so much space between each fall that you don't even care about it. And then maybe you start planning it in and actually going, oh, do you know what? In 2 months, I've got my granddad's birthday. I know that's coming. I know I'm going to want a night where I don't have to think about how many grams of potatoes that's on my plate. Maybe I just plan for it already. Maybe during that week, I drop 100 calories every day. And that gives me another, 600-700 calories to take into that night. That's my dessert done. Great. Okay, well, what else can I do? Well, I can maybe accept the fact that I'll go 1,000 over that day. What is 1,000 realistically? A quarter of a pound? I'm okay with that. And just get into the mind frame that you've set an expectation of what you're willing to do and what the consequence of that will be, and then already accepting it. That way, when it then happens, it's part of your plan. It's not you going off plan. It's not you having a cheat meal. It's not you falling off track. You've already understood that that's going to happen. You've planned for it. You've accepted it before you went into it. And it's not a fail. It's just part of your journey. And just understand that we all have those days. I come from, I was very chubby when I started my journey. And I was chubby for most of my childhood. And I had a relationship with food whereby, I had an obese stepdad and I had 2 brothers. So if you didn't fucking eat fast, you just didn't eat. So I could pile down some serious food, and I still can. I don't have that bit of me that says, oh, you're full, stop. I can go on and on and on to the point of uncomfortable. So it's taken a long time for me to learn about satiety, to learn about hunger cues, and to be okay with leaving stuff and not having these mini binges that, essentially like a trip to the cinema just becomes a massive binge, But we all go through these things, and it's about accepting that part of you as a person. It's taken many, many years of you to build whatever habit that's put you a little bit back. It's gonna take years for you to undo that with new habits. So, maybe not be so hard on yourself, because I find that people are extremely hard on themselves if they don't nail it in the first go. The negative self-talk is just, you would never accept anyone else talking like that to someone. So I think a part of it is accepting from the onset. And this is what I say to clients as well. Look, you're going to fall. You're 100% going to fall. I'd like you not to fall. You would like you not to fall, but you are going to fall. Don't take that now as permission for me to say, now you can just tell me that you fell every time you fall. But it's going to happen, and you're going to have to accept that mentally from the get-go. If you do fall, let me know. We'll talk it through. We'll talk about why that happened, what you had, what you did, why you did that, and then we just move on. No restriction, no crazy backtracking. We'll just move on.
Yeah, I think like that the little bit you just said just at the end is like one of the things that I think resonates with me and my experience with people, and that is just trying to reflect for not too long, but just a moment to say, okay, well, why? What caused us to go off track, and how can we learn from this? Not treat it as this huge failure, but how can we actually learn? What have we learned about you as a person that has resulted in something going slightly off plan that we maybe didn't expect? So is it the case that you can't control yourself when there's ice cream in the freezer? That's my one.
So do love a Magnum ice cream though.
It's like, so if there's ice cream in the freezer, I literally it won't last the day, and I know that, and that's something that I've learned. And say I just literally just don't buy it unless I specifically want it. I just don't buy it. And I always think that these little things, I think the worst thing that people can do is just sort of have that little stutter and then just almost ignore it and then just carry on. It's almost okay, well, what caused that? Can I do something slightly different? Not make it into this huge drama that you dissect for days and sort of rip your soul to shreds because you're a bad person and things like that. But just, is there a quick learning point I can take from this?
Yeah.
Do something slightly different. And I think that's kind of quite good. And then something that we're both familiar with in terms of like the MNU world is the whole if then thing. So if X happens, then I'm going to do Y. And I think that's been really useful for clients of mine that are in sort of stressful jobs, particularly in like the office environment where like the trip to the vending machine is real convenient and easy. So it's like, if I feel hungry at 3 p.m, when is that lull between lunch and leaving work, is then I'm going to go for a walk, 5 minutes, clear my head, or I'm going to do whatever. And having those kind of, literally, I've thought about this before it happens.
Yeah.
So then again, if you still want to go and have a chocolate bar, cool.
Yeah.
Go and have a chocolate bar. Don't feel guilty about it. But at least you've kind of gone through this conscious thought process that allows you to make a logical decision rather than an off the cuff, oh shit, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to freaking binge on a load of stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's important. And I think as well, learning to stop yourself before you do things, that's a goal that one of my clients is working on. So she got into the thing of, having falls and then telling me after. But the point is, we need to get to a stage where we stop and we think, and then we, just think about what we're about to do and why we're doing it and whether or not it actually serves a purpose towards, the goal that we have. Is what we're about to do going to make us feel any better? Especially, a lot of my clients, they stress eat. They emotionally eat, when they're anxious and when things are going wrong, that's when they, face plant a cake, and it's all about thinking back, having that conversation after it's happened, going, did that make you feel better? Do you actually feel better for that? Okay, well, can we remember that for next time? No, because you actually feel worse now. You feel like you've messed things up. And actually, you did eat 3,000 calories and that's the week done, because we, as coaches, we can't also allow our clients to be naive about the consequence. We don't have to jam it down anyone's throat that they fucked up. They know they fucked up, but let's look at the consequence of that fuck up. If you've had a day where you've had, 3,000-4,000 calories, you may have blown that week. So let's remember that to next time. Next time you're about to do that, just stop and think, actually, I've done all of this good this week. I've really had a sense of achievement. I've really got all my stuff done. Do I really want to blow that now? Or can I stop myself and do something positive instead? Can I go for a walk? Can I, go by myself to the cinema and watch a new, film and being comfortable doing that? And maybe that's a checkpoint. Actually, I learned that I can go to the cinema by myself. These things, trying to find almost distractions or almost things that are more positive in our lives to take away from what we're about to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like what you're touching on there for me is like almost the spine of the whole behavior change process,
Yeah,
because I think that maybe, I mean, maybe I'm jumping to conclusions, but maybe a lot of people think that, or don't necessarily pay attention to the fact that behavior change is not something that you just talk about at the beginning and expect to happen at the end. It's a case of there's things that you've got to do to create the change. It's not
instantly.
just
Yeah,
about saying, "Oh, I've got a goal, boom, and I've got a why," and then, boom. If I just,
coach.
you know, yeah, if time just ticks by, then behavior change will just happen. I
Yeah,
think there's a thing where there are those things like you're saying is you've got to try and preempt, like where my, I don't know, weak points, or where are my vulnerabilities, or whatever, trigger points, whatever you want to call it.
definitely.
Where are they? Okay, so
Yeah.
that's a step of behavior change. Then it's saying, okay, if it did go wrong, what can I do differently? That's another step of behavior change.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily, obviously, the actual component parts of, okay, well, how do I manage calories without tracking? That might be a bit of a behavior change, or adding a certain amount of vegetables to your lunch and dinner meals might be a behavior change. But I
Yeah.
think there's so many other component parts that you have to be as actively involved in as the number that you become attached to on the scale.
100%.
Even more so. Otherwise, the behavior change doesn't actually materialize.
No, you have to fall in love, and this is as cheesy as finding your why. You do have to fall in love with the process. You do. When I first started out on my fitness journey, I wasn't attached to any number on the scale, but I started lifting weight and I felt fucking strong. And then that became a thing. Maybe I can lift a little bit heavier next week and a little bit heavier, and then things started changing aesthetically, and then that was pretty fucking awesome. That was cool. And it's just about getting excited about these small wins that you get every day and seeing yourself change as a human being, and just falling a little bit in love with yourself as well. Not to be like, but I think it's important that you start loving who you are and who you are becoming, and not who you want to be. If you're so fixated of this end result and not actually appreciating the small wins that you have every day that's going to take you there, then you will probably not elicit that behavior change. But if you do, then that will come natural, because there's a reinforcement there. If you do an action and you get an immediate reward, whether it's other people saying that you look good or whatever, or you patting yourself on the back because now you can lift more, or you're getting excited because you're finally getting some good sleep, then that's an immediate reward. That good feeling is a reward. And if you're constantly getting that and giving yourself that, then that will elicit you to do it more and more and more again. But that comes back to if the goal is relevant. If those approach-oriented goals you've set isn't relevant for you, you're not going to have that instant reward after, because you don't actually give a shit, do you? So if you don't give a shit, you're not going to have the reward, and there's nothing telling you to keep doing it. You have a check-in with your coach, and it would probably be great if you said that you did those push-ups before night, but actually you didn't, because you don't give a shit. So it has to be relevant. It has to be something that you as an individual is going to make you feel pretty bloody good once you've done it,
Yeah, and I 100% agree. Like for me as well, like both in where I started from a fitness point of view, but also like in a business point of view, that whole process of loving the process, as cheesy as it may sound, is 100% true.
Oh, definitely.
And it's been something that I guess I've learned more and more as the years have gone past. I mean, I'm making myself sound old now, but
you are old though, aren't you?
38. Is that old? I don't know.
Yes, because I'm 34, so by definition.
I'm ancient. It's the grey hair and the beard that kind of...
Context, if I was 14, you were 18. Old as fuck.
Right. I didn't expect the abuse, but okay.
That's part of having me on a podcast.
There you go. There you go. But for me, from like a business point of view, is that, you know, um, I just enjoy what I do every day.
Good.
Like podcasting, right? I did have this. Did this on a live maybe yesterday or the day before, where I was just talking about I just like making content. I like doing podcasts. I like just randomly talking into a microphone for 20 minutes, 30 minutes about a nutrition topic, or flicking on a live on Instagram on a Sunday and just answering a bunch of questions. I said, that does not feel like work. I mean, sitting here talking to you now does not feel like I'm working. Technically I am working, but it just feels like this is.
But talking to me should always be a treat anyways.
There you go. So this is just part of the process, and I'm enjoying this process. You know, whether a infographic I make gets 20 likes or 200 likes, it doesn't matter to me, because I enjoyed the process of making it.
And that's going to spur you on to keep doing it, which is what it's all about.
The compounding effect of all of that over a period of time gets you to the end result. And it's the same with weight and fat loss. If you go in there saying, well, every day has to materially impact something on what I see in the mirror. If I do a day of calorie deficit and I don't see a six pack, it was not worth it. Then you're always going to.
We've all been there. The betrayal, the absolute betrayal.
Yeah, on a diet, ab check every day.
Like, what is this?
Yeah,
I definitely had vegetables yesterday. I know I had vegetables yesterday. What is actually going on?
Exactly, they lied to me. But so I think it's it applies to everything.
I agree.
Cool. So, last question then. So, what I'm going to ask you now is, we've gone through a whole bunch of different stuff about behavior change and things like that. For you, if someone's listening to this and is really bought into the whole process now, okay, all right, I need to focus on my behavior change. I've been too wrapped up in just scale weight or this, that, and the other. Where should they start? Maybe they haven't got a coach yet, and they're maybe not able to get one just yet. So someone who's kind of on their own, feels like a little bit out on a limb, maybe. Where should they start? How do they start that process?
I think the first thing is obviously try and imagine what you're trying to achieve. You know, maybe it's a person. Maybe you look at someone on Instagram. You're like, that's what I want. I want that physique. Okay, well, what does that person consistently do on an everyday basis that is keeping them where they are? You know, maybe they go to the gym. Maybe they get a lot of steps in. Maybe they eat healthy. All of these things. Try and identify some of the habits that they have, and then look at your own schedule. So look at, you know, is there any behaviors I currently do that I could swap? So that's one thing. You know, maybe I could swap one behavior for another behavior, and that will make it easier. Is there any triggers? You know, so, you know, maybe you have an hour after eating, and you normally go for a walk. Is that where you could go to the gym instead? You know, just identifying easy areas in your life that you can set these habit changes up, and then just applying them there. So just getting it to fit your lifestyle, your preferences, your, you know, social environment as well, I think is very key. And again, make it doable. So make it something that's you can achieve, but also make it something that's hard enough to make an impact on your life, so that you actually see some results. Because again, it comes back to that reward. Getting the instant reward makes you feel good about it, and that's going to keep you essentially doing it because it makes you feel good, doesn't it? So that's what I would say. Just start there.
Perfect. Cool. Awesome, Louise. So great to talk to you as always. Perfect. So if someone's listening to this, is now inspired they want to know more about Bang, how do they find more about Bang?
About the Bang. Well, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook on Bang on Nutrition. Obviously, I've also got my personal Facebook page, which is just Louise Bang, go figure. But other than that, if you go by Bang on Nutrition, you can't go wrong. You will find me. Website be building. Once that's up, it's going to be bangonnutrition.com and likely.co.uk as well, because why not? I'm that extra. I need to be extra. And yeah, that's it. Reach out, get in touch, have any questions. I'm always free and available. Well, not always, but as much as I can be.
Obviously. Cool. And I'll put some links to Instagram and Facebook in the show notes of the podcast as well. So people can just click those links, go and say hello, say they listen to the podcast and tell you what they thought.
Amazing. This was fun.
Yeah, it was good. It was great to have you on. So thanks very much. And
thank you.
I'm sure that people got a bunch of information and useful tips out of it. So I think there's going to be really, really useful for everyone. So thanks very much for being part of the show. Hey there, so I hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. If you did, the links to Louise's social media are in the show notes of this podcast. And of course, if you want to come and see me on social media as well, it's at iron_paradise_fitness. Come and tell me you listened to the podcast, tell me what you thought of the interview, and also ask me a bunch of questions about training and nutrition if you so wish. But for now, all I'm going to say is thanks so much for listening. Keep living the lean life, and I'll see you for the next episode of the show.